So, welcome to our fourth Northwest Business Network event of 2021. I'm very excited this morning to welcome all of you and our special guest. My name is Michelle Sherritt, and I am one of the founders of the Northwest Business Network and our other networking groups. I'm joined this morning by our marketing director, Rhonda Seelinger, as well. She helps us with all of our marketing for the events, and she also helps to facilitate these events as well and to keep us on time. Before we begin, I would like to tell you a little bit more about our networking groups. We are comprised of 5 powerful networking groups. We have the Oak Brook, Naperville, Northwest, Windy City, and North Shore Business Networks. And just 2 years ago, we decided to take these groups live. They started on LinkedIn in 2008, and they grew to be the largest networking groups in their areas online. So we decided 2 years ago to take it live, to hold networking events, happy hours, monthly meetings. We also had quarterly sit-down dinner events as well. This was all open to our members for a membership fee. And then we also had newcomers come as well. So it was open to the public too. And so that allowed our members to be able to mingle and network with people who weren't inside of our own network, to give them more networking opportunities. Included in our fee, we also had advertising opportunities for our members, podcast interviews to kind of get the word out about their business, and many other things that you can view on our website at nwbiz.net. And if you'd like to learn more about our membership, you can go there as well. I will let you know that our fee for the networking group was $3.99. We did lower that once COVID happened to $1.99 for the year. And now we're going to put it back to the original price. And we're going to be doing that next Friday, the 16th of April. So if you're on today and you still want to get in for that $1.99 price for the year, you just simply need to get your application into us by next Friday at 5 p.m. And you, again, just go to the nwbiz.net website and we will honor that for you. Before we begin, I wanted to go ahead and tell you folks that we have this recorded today. The recording will be made available to everyone on our website at nwbiz.net by the end of the day tomorrow. You'll also receive an email with the link as well. So if you missed something or you need to leave, you can still view it. We are also broadcasting live on Facebook right now to all of our networking groups. So we have folks on Zoom and we also have people on Facebook Live. So I want to welcome those folks that are on Facebook because there's quite a few of you. We will be filtering out questions. So we do ask that you mute yourself during the presentation. When our speaker does ask for Q&A, you may unmute yourself to ask questions, or you can type them in the chat box and we'll go ahead and filter those out. Also in the chat box, either on Facebook or on Zoom, you can put in your contact information and your name. That way we can do a little bit of networking. And if we see some familiar faces, at least we have your contact information. There's quite a few folks that are still coming in on Zoom here. Otherwise, I would have us go around the room and do some introductions. But we'll save that. We have a meet and greet on Monday for our Oak Brook Business Network. So if you'd like to join us for that, that's where you would have the opportunity to do some online networking. Today's speaker is Dalil Allison. Dalil is a technology professional and entrepreneur. He is the CEO and co-founder of Rooks DM, a tech consulting group that helps alleviate pain points for small to mid-sized companies by using the right technology. Today, Dalil is going to talk to us about the 5 must-know technology tips for business leaders to save time and money. Welcome, Dalil.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michelle, for having me. Good morning, everyone. As Michelle mentioned, my name is Dalil Allison. I'm with Rooks DM. Really excited to be here. I love talking about technology, and I also love how you can save time and money with the right technology. So today I'll share 5 tips that I've learned from working with clients and just being in the tech space for a little while. Before I jump into it, just like to give you a little bit of overview about my background, my company, what it is that we do. So it kind of ties directly to the tips that we provide today. So Rooks DM, we're on a mission. And so our mission is to help teams and organizations work as efficiently as possible. And the way that we do that is by helping them identify the right technologies to either automate or make their processes more efficient at the end of the day. A little bit more about me, as Michelle mentioned, I am a technology professional entrepreneur. I've been in the tech space for over a decade now. My experience ranges from business analyst to project manager for all types of organizations, which I appreciate because it gives me a lot of perspective on things from small business all the way up to enterprise level scale, and figuring out where technology can actually help them fill the gaps and make things a lot more efficient and effective at the end of the day. Um, I always like to have a little picture here of my dog Romeo, which we adopted last September. Obsession would be an understatement of how much I love him. So I like to call that out. But I also do just enjoy hanging out in Chicago. I'm a big coffee person. So if you have any coffee shops, feel free to send them over to me. And then I also do enjoy networking as well. So really excited to see things get back to in-person networking once it's safe to be able to do so, so we can meet people either at groups or over coffee or lunch or whatever it may be. A little bit about the founding team. So it's me and my co-founder is Lovebert Ledger. By title, we're both, one of the things that makes us a little unique, we feel we're both first generation Americans from Ethiopia. Myself, my parents are from Ethiopia and his parents are from Haiti. And one of the things that we always were raised to do was to help others. And we believe that Rooks is doing just that, just helping people identify and implement the right technology so they can save time, they can save money, and ultimately kind of do things easier and alleviate some of the headache. And we're always looking to strive to make a difference and continue to move forward, which is why our meaning of Rooks. So it's actually pronounced Rook, and it means to go very far. So as I mentioned, we're always looking to help and push people further than they are today. A little bit about our experience as an organization. So we were established in 2014. We've worked with several small to medium-sized businesses over the years, helping them kind of implement the right technologies for their processes. And our specialty nowadays is within the professional services space. So if you think about a law firm, for example, financial service advisory firms or healthcare practices are some of the clients we've worked with in the past. And you can see a few of our logos here of companies that we worked with. So now the fun stuff, why everyone is here, the 5 tips that I'm looking to share today. And I always start with this one. So before we even jump into technology, I always say tip number 1 would be to outline your processes. And so why would you do that? We always get the requests of, hey, Dalil, or they come to me and my team and say, hey, I found this new technology, or I'm thinking about using this specific piece of technology within my business. But we always start with the question is, why are you looking to use it? What does your process look like today? And the reason we ask that is because once you kind of start with the processes first, you're able to help with saving on cost in the long term. Because what you don't want to do is try to throw technology at a process that is either broken or maybe doesn't need to be automated. And in order to be able to identify that, we always recommend taking the time to document your processes and outline things, because then you can really get a sense of, okay, if step 1 to 2 are these specific items, is it even make sense to automate it? Does it make sense to put technology towards it? Or we always see too, sometimes when we kind of do the document process with our clients, is sometimes they just remove some of the steps. So then not only are you not needing to implement a technology for it, you're able to eliminate steps, which makes the whole process quicker at the end of the day. Some other things that we've seen that have been pretty key of why you should always start with your processes first is because it gets you and your team on the same page. So what we'll do occasionally with our clients is we'll have the manager and the direct reports have a discussion, and we'll walk through their processes with them and say, okay, let's talk about how a new client is coming into your firm today. And the employee will say, oh, but I actually do this task, and the manager will kind of compliment and say, oh, I didn't really realize you were doing that. So there's a disconnect there when you don't have the processes fully documented, which is why we believe you should always start with processes first and then go to technology second, because not only does it allow you and your team to be on the same page, it also makes things much more easier to scale, because once you have the process documented, everyone's on the same page and everyone knows, okay, step 1, 2, 3, and 4 happen in these steps, and these are what I'm responsible for or what I should be waiting for moving forward. And you can see here to the right, we have a fancy process flow. The next slide that I'll show you is kind of a high level example of what a specific process outline could look like. Very simple, pull out a sheet of paper, write the steps down. So if you want to say, how do we collect payments, for example, would be a scenario. In this specific example, we have a sales process. So once a contract gets signed by a client, what needs to happen after the fact, you can see there's a series of steps. The contract gets saved, some notifications go out, some emails and meetings get set up. And from that, then we can start asking the question of, okay, where does the contract get saved? Is it in OneDrive? Is it in an email? Is it in a shared folder? And then we can start thinking about where can technology actually help you either automate it or make things much more efficient to get everyone on the same page. And so with that, now that we have the outline, what we typically do, me and my team will go through even a more due diligence process, which is called process flow. So we'll build out actually these process flows based off of the content that we're given from the client. And then through that, we can even have a further discussion to say, hey, what are some decision points here that we want to make throughout your process? And what are the technologies involved for it? So once again, my example is once the client signs the contract with the sales team, we might have a decision point. If you're a law firm, for example, doing immigration work, the decision point might ask the question of, hey, is this a domestic case or is it going to be international? And then based off that, we can actually save the contract into their specific folders, which will help alleviate a team member having to download it, manually drop it into a folder, move things around. We can do that all systematically through the right technology. But once again, it's all because we have the process and know what needs to get done ahead of time. So then when we get to the technology, we can make those decisions a lot smarter. So I always like to outline this one as well too. What are the processes that your business has? These are the 4 main ones we always see throughout professional service organizations, and that we are always looking to either make things much more efficiently or just automate them as a whole. The first one starts with the client intake. And this starts after a potential prospect has reached out and says, hey, I'm interested in hiring your firm, let's say law firm, for example, to represent me. Or you might be a financial advisory firm. So they might say, hey, I want to hire you to do my financial planning. That would be the intake process and the steps that they go through from start to finish before they move into process 2, which is onboarding. Now that they says, yep, everything sounds good, I want to sign on a dotted line and commit to hiring your organization to help me with my financial planning, represent me in court, or draw up contracts, that would be the onboarding process. And that process is a little bit more details you need for their file, monitor some documents, and then that's where it really starts to say your internal team has to start doing some activities to say, okay, I need to set them up with specific accounts or get things moving. And then the other 2 is management. So now that they've come on board, you're looking to provide your services. It's all around the management side of things. And that's kind of how do you schedule the quarterly meetings, or how do you generate the reports, or how do you give them the updates that they need for their specific case. And then the final one would be offboarding. And that is either if the contract has ended. So for example, if you're a law firm and you're drafting contracts for a small business, once the contracts are drafted, then the project is complete. You need to collect payment, provide the final deliverables, and kind of close that file out would be a scenario. And that would be part of the offboarding process there. Some tools that you can use to outline your process. As I mentioned, Word is a simple one. So you could take out Word document, outline them. If you want to be a little fancy, you could use a Lucidchart, which is a SaaS platform you can purchase a subscription for, or you can use Microsoft Visio, which is pretty common to build these process flows. But as I mentioned, I wouldn't focus too much on trying to build pretty process flows, especially if you're just getting started. I would say start with Word, outline the processes, and then kind of figure out where the automations or the efficiencies could happen. So might be a good time if there's any questions in the chat. I can take them now, or if anyone wants
Yes.
to jump in.
Yes, we have a lot of questions.
Okay.
Um, one person said our company is all over the place with finding a CRM platform that works for our business. We keep spending money on well known CRM systems because it seems everyone's using them. How do we figure out what is right for us? What does that research process look like?
Yep. So that's a great question. I would say start with the processes again. Is what is your sales process, and then what type of prospects would be my question there. Of okay, are there specific categories of prospects that you're targeting and you're nurturing those leads because that's where a CRM can actually provide the most value. And then what are the touch points that you want to happen along the way. So if you have a new prospect that potentially wants to purchase your services, what is the experience is what we call it that they would go through. So maybe there's an initial introductory email where you're initially reaching out, and then you have a sequence of follow-ups, 1 2 3, and then from there what happens once they convert into an actual paying customer. I would also say too, look at kind of your current technology stack, and I don't know what type of company they are, but if there's any deal breaking technologies that you can't replace. So for example, if you're a law firm, there might be a practice management system you're using, so you want to take that into consideration and say, hey, I'm probably going to need my data to flow from a CRM into that practice management system. So maybe thinking to use maybe an industry specific one or something that already has a first party integration between CRM and your main core system, if that's a deal breaker in your case.
Okay. How, as a business owner, do you suggest introducing a new technology to your team?
So that's a good question. So the way I would suggest it, and what we do with our clients is we work with kind of a smaller team, right, as we're implementing the technology and figuring out what the requirements are. And then when we're building it, before we actually like roll it out to the organization, there's obviously a lot of testing and feedback. One of the things that we've seen that has worked well and that we always recommend is that they identify a champion. And so this might be someone that's not at the manager level, it might be more like boots on the ground and day in and day out is tactical and actually like executing the work. Have them be part of the technology discussion, because not only will they provide the value of allowing us to understand the processes and pain points on the ground level, they'll also have buy-in, right, and say, hey, this is a cool technology that I see can actually help me. So then once they have that kind of buy-in, they'll then take it and let their team members know, hey, we've been working on this for months now, it's going really well, you guys should use it. And they can always serve as the point of contact too. So then people will come to them and say like, hey, Michelle, for example, I know we just implemented Microsoft Teams, I'm struggling with figuring out how to add a new channel or how to share documents on the platform, could you help me? So that would be my biggest suggestion. And then obviously any technology you're implementing, always have a training session for it. And that might be a series. So we've done it more structured, where we say, hey, this is the technology that we've implemented. Here are some best practices that we've seen, if it's something general like Microsoft Teams. And then we might also do like a roundtable training where we'll come in as the technology consultants, meet with their entire team, have them use the system, maybe for 2 to 4 weeks. And then they'll come to this roundtable and they'll kind of give us a list of questions potentially ahead of time. And then we can chat through those in real time to kind of answer any kind of hesitations or struggles they might be having.
Okay. And this kind of leads into the same question. How do you get everyone on board to change a technology that you use? It's hard to teach old dogs new tricks. Some of our employees are very stubborn. They've been using a piece of software for many years, and we want to change things up.
Um, so you can go. So the question I would ask is that, so we deprecate software a lot, which essentially means we get rid of it. So there's a cutoff time period of saying, hey, like if we're migrating, for example, from Google to Microsoft, then there will become a point where Google will no longer be available. And so the question I would ask is, why are they still having access to an existing system when a new one has been set up? And if that's an opportunity to say, hey, we are making a cutoff by this point to move to the new system. So if you have any questions, start using the system now, getting familiar with it, and then let us know how we can best help you. And then that ties back to having the champion, right? A person they can go to ask questions, and then also the training sessions there moving forward would be key to that. But yeah, I would love to know if there's a reason that the software hasn't already gotten hasn't been gotten rid of yet. So
Okay. Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to unmute and has a question? I think we're good. All right.
perfect. Great questions. So we'll jump in tip number 2. This is one that's happening, I would say, all day, every day. Now that we're virtual, but even prior to being virtual, is just make book meetings much easier. And I'm sure this has been a hot topic for a lot of organizations, but we put together a fun little scenario that talks about trying to book a meeting with someone, right? So we've all seen this before. Hi, Tom, I'm looking to schedule a time. Here are a few times that work for me. Please let me know which ones work for you. Um, I see a lot of eyes rolling. Yep. So what happens next? Obviously, Tom is busy. He doesn't respond for a few hours or days, and your availability changes now, so that email is no longer valid. Tom doesn't check the time zone differences. We've seen that quite a bit from CST to ET, and then he schedules a time when he's busy because he didn't realize that. And then the other one that we've seen is they just forgot to respond altogether because they might need to go read that email, check their calendar, and then respond with a few times that work for them. So that causes a lot of bottleneck or kind of challenges, if you will, to be able to easily allow them to schedule. And so from there, that's why we always recommend using a scheduling automation tool. The big one right now, obviously, is Calendly, but there's several others that you can use. HubSpot has the ability for you to schedule meetings as well. There's Microsoft Bookings. One that we've seen, if you're on Google, is Mixmac. So it's essentially like an extension you can use. It's pretty powerful from what I've seen clients use. It can do scheduling, but it can also do some other things such as storing client or such as working as a CRM and collecting data and some other items as well. But the big one I would say start off with would either be Calendly. You can get a free subscription with it, or you can do Microsoft Bookings if you're on the Microsoft platform as well. That usually comes with your business Microsoft license. And this is an easier way too. So even a simpler way to actually do the scheduling. If you're on Calendly, for example, there's always the add-ons. So this is a good example of the Calendly add-on for Outlook. So once you kind of have your Calendly environment set up, you have the various meetings. When you're responding to an email, instead of having to copy and paste any link, you can simply have the Outlook Calendly add-on. It'll show you the different meetings that you have set up. You click a button, it'll copy the link for you, and then you can paste it in the email. Or if you want to be much more targeted, you can click the little calendar button and select specific times that specific days you would like for them to actually be able to book. And what I've seen personally with this, I've implemented this last year pretty rigorously, and I've seen kind of my bookings rate go up tremendously. So whenever I send out a link, and even if it's someone that I recently just met, or if I'm doing like a cold outreach, I get a really high conversion rate for this one because it takes all the friction away. There's no back and forth. It's very simple. Hey, if you're looking to meet, here's a link to my calendar, book a time. And the one thing that I want to note as it ties back to tip number 1 is you want to think about your processes. Are there specific days that you only want to take sales calls versus internal meetings versus maybe networking calls or whatever it may be? Thinking about how you can categorize your schedule and then building the scheduling automation tool to work for that process moving forward. And then here's just a quick screenshot of what it would look like. As you can see, find a time that works on your calendar, their calendar. They can confirm it and book it right in real time. Also, you have the additional benefits of if there's other people on your team, you can do kind of a round robin style to say, hey, I want to schedule when one of our team members are available, or you can make it required to say, hey, I only want availability to show when all team members are available for this specific type of meeting moving forward. So there's a bunch of cool things you can do with Calendly that work really well. Once again, I'll stop here. I think it's a good time to ask any questions.
I don't have any questions on Facebook, but I do have a comment. I was doing that with the emails back and forth and trying to schedule things. And just like you said in your example, people would not see the email or they wouldn't be available. And then they get back to me 2 days later and then my availability changed. So last year I changed over to Calendly and it's been amazing.
Yes.
The only thing though, and I don't know if you have a suggestion for this, but I have in my signature for my email schedule a call with me under my picture.
Mm.
And so in the email, when someone wants to schedule a time with me, I'll say just simply click on that under my picture and you can schedule a time. Do you have a suggestion for maybe a better layout or a better format for doing that? Or am I doing it correctly?
It depends how your calendar is structured. So the way I have it set up is I don't have it in my email signature, and I have specific calendar types for when I want people to schedule things, depending on who they are. So if you want to, the way I would probably do it is maybe have a specific Calendly type, like event, that you can say, hey, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 10 to 12. I don't care who books, anyone can book. And that's where I'm going to allocate that time because it aligns with my schedule. Then I would put that Calendly link in the email footer moving forward, because then you can control when things are happening on what day and don't give people free reign to kind of schedule at any time.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Okay, that's a great tip. Does anyone on Zoom have a question? Again, if you guys have questions on Zoom, just unmute yourself when we do the Q&A part. Okay.
Perfect. So we'll jump into it. So tip number 3 is use a project management tool. So obviously, if you're, like I said, we work with professional service organizations a lot, but any company, right? They need to manage projects, whether they be clients or internal projects such as marketing. And we've all seen this. So the dreaded Excel document, while it's great, you can get everything in one snap view and have it in a list. It doesn't do a lot of things that a project management tool can do. And so what we recommend is kind of implementing one of these, or there's a bunch of others. I know you can start with like Trello as well. Our organization personally uses ClickUp. It has a lot of features and functionality, and then also too, it has the ability to automate things, which makes our lives easier. But more importantly, what it allows us to do from a project management standpoint is to know where tasks live, who owns the task, what state it's in, if there's any actionable that's required for each of the team members, and then ultimately like who owns it, right? Because within all the tasks that are happening, and there's a lot of moving pieces within your team and organization, you want to know who's responsible for that. So if I do need to know, hey, we have client that needs a specific report, who's responsible for delivering the report? Was it delivered? When was it delivered? Was there any blockers or any questions that came up? What was that collaboration like? You can get all that information in a project management tool if set up correctly. And if we go to the next slide here, this kind of shows you like a layout, right? So here's a marketing board, and we can see this is the status of various tasks. These are open, these are pending, these are in progress. These are who they're assigned to. So once again, that ownership piece. And even within ClickUp, if you were to click on one of those tasks, you can get a lot more information. So if we were to click on Get on High Rankings website, for example, we could have a description that's there that explains what the task is looking to accomplish. You can also have, in this case, within ClickUp, it has the ability to do chat functionality within the actual task. So if me and Michelle were collaborating on those specific rankings, I could say, hey, Michelle, I just checked and our Google one was not updated accordingly. We only have 20 reviews instead of 30. And then she could reply back to me, but it keeps everything centralized within that specific task. So if we need to go reference it later, we can do so. Or more importantly, if leadership needs a view of something, you can easily generate a report off of that as well. Here's another snapshot of ClickUp. You can see here it's kind of split up. So on the left-hand panel, there's various different folders. So you have like project management, task management. They have like a getting things done one for the sake of demo. And then on the right side, you have each of your specific individual tasks that need to get completed. And then you can see too, you have the ownership once again, who's it assigned to, and then some other key data points. Hey, is this a high priority? Do we want to flag it and make it red? Is there a specific budget assigned with it? And things of that nature. And the good thing here too is once you have a project management tool, this kind of ties into like the client intake, right? So if we think about client intake, we can say, hey, once we receive a new form, for example, there's definitely things that have to happen from internal team members. And if we set it up in a way, we can say, hey, once that form is submitted, what I want to do is create specific tasks in my project management tool and assign them to the people that need to execute on those. And that makes it really nice because then that person gets notified, they get a task assigned, they don't have to remember it in their head, they don't have to write a note anywhere, everything is in a centralized place, and it allows for other team members to see what's going on. And more importantly, it gives them a central location to kind of track things moving forward. Here's a cool little report. So within ClickUp, you can see like a dashboard. You can see workloads of people. If you're managing multiple employees for this example, you can see kind of what tasks were done, what's the status of each of them, and kind of how they're performing at the end of the day. Any questions there on project management?
Yeah, so on Facebook, someone said, does your firm come in to do training as well on these software?
So we will, if we always provide training on any of the software that we implement. So yes, would be the question there.
Okay, that's all I have.
I'm somewhat familiar with Asana, and what you just showed is very similar to that. How do you kind of distinguish so that you can pick the right one, or do you feel like they're fairly similar in terms of benefit? And, I'm just kind of wondering how you select one over the other.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So a lot of times too, clients come to us with an idea of what they want to use for a project management tool, or usually they've tried some things out. So what we'll have them do is almost make the selection themselves and say, hey, maybe play around with each of them, sign up for a free trial if you're thinking about implementing it, and let us know the feedback you're having. And then what we'll do is ask the questions of like, what type of projects are you looking to track and manage, and what's your process for doing that, and who needs to be like involved. And then based off all that information, we'll kind of allow them to make the recommendation and kind of support that at the end of the day, because they're very different. So we actually, me personally, my company started off with Monday. It didn't work for us, which is why we went to ClickUp, and it was almost personal. I just didn't like some of the flow of Monday.com, and then some of the structure and the customizability that I couldn't do with Monday versus ClickUp, which is why we ended up there. And then we just built the process around that. But there's also others too. Like I know a lot of people were using Trello, for example, and that might be a good project management tool to use if you don't have a ton of projects going on at once, and if there's only very specific tasks that you want to track, and there's not a lot of collaboration between team members. That might be something to look at as well.
Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions?
I think we're good.
Perfect. And I know someone asked a question about CRM. So this is a good one here. Tip number 4 is use a CRM if you don't have one. And then you'll see, I think there might have been, I see a yellow line on my screen, sorry. There might have, so this is, once again, we see a lot of people either do this in Excel or kind of do it in their head, or maybe kind of use the email inbox to manage relationships. We always suggest having a CRM. There's a lot of free options out there. One that I personally started with was HubSpot. It gives you the ability to kind of just get the contacts in a place that is centralized and allow you to be able to track activities and also track where the specific contact is in the process, which an Excel spreadsheet won't do at the end of the day. And then more importantly, as you continue to scale and bake out your processes, then you can start thinking about automation. So not only do you have all your potential prospects in a centralized location, now you can see the activities, you can kind of get all the info you need, but the long term you can think about automating some of the follow-ups, and then email marketing is usually a big discussion that comes up with the CRM as well there. You can see here's an example of a Salesforce screenshot. So just getting more organized. This is a pipeline view, if you will. So if you have multiple sales teams and they are responsible for either different territories or maybe different types of leads that they're bringing in, you can get as a leader a snapshot of your entire pipeline to say, hey, how is my business doing today? What opportunities are out there? Where are they at in terms of the processes? Who are the contacts? What activities have happened? You can get all those questions answered through using a CRM. And more importantly, you can actually nurture that lead, which is the biggest reason to use a CRM, is being able to nurture it, to say, okay, I'm due for a follow-up, for example, for H&D Block, right? And where are they at? They're under the need analysis phase. What's the next step in the process for the sales team to execute on? What has been done? And it also gives you 2 read receipts, which are really nice. So you can actually see if someone's opened your email, because a lot of times what I've seen in the past is I might send 1, 2, 3 follow-ups and I don't see them opening the email at all. So then that might incentivize me to say, hey, okay, they're not receiving my email. Let me pick up the phone and call them. So it kind of gives you that intel to kind of know what the next step should be, more or less. Back to the question, how to choose the right CRM. I think that kind of goes around your sales processes, budgeting, and then obviously any core technologies that you're using today that can't be kind of replaced or modified, if you will, and kind of building around that, because everything starts theoretically with the CRM. You have a prospect, they reach out, the data needs to flow from one place into the CRM, which is why we think it's a very important system to have set up, and also keep up to date at the end of the day. Some big ones that we've seen, I mentioned HubSpot, for example. They have a free version that you can go and set up today at no cost. It's great. We used it for quite a while, but we have since switched over to Salesforce for a few different reasons. We switched over to Salesforce. We're using now a different email marketing platform, which is one of the reasons we kind of moved away from HubSpot. We didn't want to integrate it with a different email marketing platform. So we actually use Salesforce, and we're using ActiveCampaign to run our email newsletters and any kind of email marketing that we're doing there. Zoho has become a pretty popular one as well too. So if you want to use Zoho CRM, you can. That actually has a suite of apps that you can use for project management to CRM to kind of financing and budgeting. They have a lot of apps on the space. Or the question might be, we've seen clients, for example, in the financial services industry, they're using financial service specific CRM such as Redtail, and that works a lot better, as I mentioned, because it's made for their use case. So a lot of the little details from a technology standpoint will be in there in terms of requirements, but also too, it gives them the first party integrations that they need to connect with the financial service systems that are out there in the market. Once again, this is just a quick screenshot of what Salesforce looks like. So you can see here, you can set next steps, you can see past activities, you can kind of flag any campaigns that were sent out, any calls. It just gives you a holistic view of where a specific contact is, what has been done, what needs to get done, and where they're at in the process at the end of the day, which makes it a lot easier than using an Excel spreadsheet or even having to kind of manage these contacts, if you will, in your head, which is honestly what I was doing years ago, is kind of managing everything through my inbox queue, maybe a little bit of a spreadsheet. And now we've moved to the CRM years ago, and it's been phenomenal. We've been able to capture more opportunity because of that as well. And then once again, once you have the data centralized, so in the CRM, you have all the sales data there, potential prospects, where they're at in the process, kind of budget amounts. You can easily run reports, which makes it a lot easier. So no more needing pivot tables or kind of doing sums of Excel columns. Now you can get everything in one centralized place through a report from your CRM. And that gives you kind of a snapshot of, hey, how are my sales team doing? Where the bottlenecks are? How are we performing? Are there any activities or things we can be doing a little bit better or more efficiently at the end of the day? Okay, I'll open it up for questions again.
So on Facebook, there's a lot of comments with people's experience with CRMs they're sharing. And I just wanted, just from reading these, it kind of reminds me of our business. We're a digital marketing firm. And my husband and I run our business. And when we first started out, it was just us and we didn't have a sales team. So it was all in our head because we were small. And then that kind of lasted maybe 6 or 8 months. And then it was like, okay, this isn't going to work anymore. So then we started using HubSpot because it was free. And then once we grew out of HubSpot, we moved into Salesforce. And then from Salesforce, as we grew, we moved into SharpSpring, which is what we use now. Because it's a CRM system. It does all our email marketing, retargeting, everything. But just as a business owner, and depending too on, and maybe you can talk about this as well, but it really depends on your industry as well as to which platform is going to be right for you.
Yep.
And like you said before, like looking at your sales process, looking at what you're selling, what your offerings are, looking at how your business is structured and how you handle things will depend on the CRM system that you choose. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's very true, because all those are factors into your decision-making process. Because yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. Um, One of the questions that someone has is, do you help businesses transfer information from one platform to another? We're very apprehensive about switching our CRM system. We have many notes in our system under each customer's contact information and a huge database. Is that something that you do, and do you recommend doing?
Yeah, so we can help with it depending on the size of the project. So we were working with a law firm, and they were moving actually from Insightly to a legal specific CRM called Lawmatics. We did the migration for them because it was pretty straightforward and simple. But if it's something a little bit more complex, then we'll pull in one of our partners who just handles CRMs. But yeah, more than happy to chat further about that, and we can see what the best next step would be.
Okay.
And that is a challenge too. So that's a good question that they asked too, because the mappings between CRMs might not align very well. So you always want to be careful with making that migration.
Yeah, they're apprehensive just because they don't want to lose any data. So
Yep.
I'll reach out to them and give them your contact info.
Perfect. Any other questions, or I'll jump into the last tip.
I think we're good.
Perfect. So this is, I think, the fun stuff. It's you have your processes identified, you have the systems in place, from project management to CRM to some other internal systems that you're using. And now, how do you set up integrations? So like that's the most key part of being able to have your technology work for you, is having everything work in sync at the end of the day. And that's what integrations do, which ultimately lead to automations at the end of the day. And there's tools that allow those adaptations or adapters to occur, and I'll show some of those today. Here was a fun slide that we put together, which is essentially like data silos. So individual employees are kind of housing their data maybe on their local machine versus in the cloud or different locations throughout the organization. And that is all too common. And so what we're looking to do with having a standardized process with selecting certain systems, now you know where certain data should live. And because of that, we can actually set up the right automations moving forward. So that's always key, is thinking about, okay, before we even think about integrations or automations and things like that, let's make sure process is identified, systems are selected so people know where each of the data points should go. And then now we can start to build on that and set up the integrations and automations moving forward. So here's an example from one of our clients that we've worked with. I'll kind of walk you through a scenario. So this is a healthcare practice, and it kind of goes through the inquiry process of a new client coming in. So you can see here they receive an intro email. The staff replies to that inquiry and requests information via a form. And from there, the patient provides the form data, and then they provide them with the insurance info as well. And step 3 would be, now the staff member has to copy and paste this data into a system. And once they've copied and pasted data, the staff member has to do some outside activities, pick up the phone, call some people, or maybe submit some documents to get verification of benefits. And then step 5 would be, okay, now that they have all the information they need, they verified the benefits, they let the patient know, okay, we verified your benefits, and this is kind of your coverage for being able to have one of our licensed therapists see you. And if you look at ways that we can automate this, which we did for this specific scenario, you can see 3 main steps within that process were automated. And the first one was, instead of the person or the admin actually responding via email, the system can automatically reply to the inquiry. So we have it set up to where an inquiry comes in, system knows, okay, let me reply and request the information I need. And then that allows the patient then to fill out the information and provide the insurance information. And then from there, the system will take that data and actually update it based off of the form submission that the patient has provided. And then a task is created to say, hey, we have the information we need. Now, please go and do your manual task, which would be verifying the benefits moving forward. So they would go verify the benefits, do all those specific items. And then from there, once the benefits have been verified, they just check a button, say, verification of benefits complete. And there probably is another drop down that says what the status is, which is like approved, rejected. That will automatically flag an email to go out to the patient saying, hey, we verified your benefits, everything looks good, or no, everything doesn't look good, we need to get more information, or this is the status of it moving forward. So you can see here we were able to save a lot of time, not only in copying and pasting data, but also being able to promptly respond to things that we need from this specific new patient coming in. And what that does, it not only makes everyone's life internally easier for the admin, for the clinician, it also makes it a better experience for the patient coming into the practice, because they're saying, hey, these people are on top of it, I'm getting prompt responses, and I'm getting them the information they need to actually get me in and get seen. We like to break it down. So how much time does this really save? So for this specific example, they were spending about 30 to 60 minutes per client and roughly about 15 new clients per week on this process. And it's one of their many processes that they have within the organization. And that was equating to about 7.5 to 15 hours per week. And that was per person, right? So if they had multiple people working on it at any given time, that would obviously double or triple depending on how many people were working on the number of cases per week. And so if you compare kind of their old process to the new one with the automation, you can see the 7.5 to 15 hours per week was a range. It also kind of limited the ability to know exactly how much time it was taking, because it was a little unpredictable as to when they got to it, as to what status the file was in for the new patient, versus the new process that we were able to automate makes it a lot more predictable. We know that once we receive an inquiry, the email notification will go out in real time, and we'll only accept it in once we have the data we need, because we can set up parameters that doesn't allow them to submit the form without certain required fields, certain attachments and things of that nature. So we're able to not only shave time off, we're actually able to be a lot more predictable on how much time it's going to take for us to complete a task moving forward. So they drastically dropped that. So instead of 7.5 to 15 hours per week, they're down to 2.5 hours per week for this one specific task. And so we kind of took a ballpark average and said, hey, if we pay someone $40 an hour as an admin, for example, to do this, and they're spending 7.5 to 15 hours per week, it's 15. You can see the numbers there, 15 to about 31,000 per year, versus if we're able to kind of get the right technology in place and automate the processes, you're now down to $5,200 per year for the specific tasks to actually happen. And so I like to show this slide because it shows the value of just one process that we're automating. And so the way we always look at it is, yes, it might seem so small of, hey, we're only saving 8 hours per week, but 8 hours a week as you continue to grow your business and scale it. If you have, that's just one person, right? But let's say the volume for your clients double, then you have 2 people. So that 8 hours goes to 16, so on and so forth. That's where the real value is added, is because as you continue to scale and grow, not only will your costs grow, but the time that you're spending for a specific activity will grow. So what we're always looking to do is to find ways that technology and the integration pieces can actually help you streamline that process long-term moving forward. Some integration tools that are pretty popular. So Microsoft has Power Automate. So you can build flows based off of that. So for this example, the form comes in, we're able to grab that form data, run it through Power Automate, and kind of store some data in SharePoint, and then create certain Microsoft Planner tasks and things of that nature. But there's also Zapier as well. And these are tools that are essentially adapters, right? They're able to say, hey, software 1, talk to software B. So an example would be, hey, if I get a new upload for OneDrive, then set a task here or something along those lines. And it allows 2 systems to kind of work in sync and have things happen much quicker than having someone do it manually at the end of the day. And so now I'll open it up for questions one last time before I go into the final review.
So on Facebook, someone said, are there checks and balances on the automation to make sure it's working correctly?
Yes, there is. So obviously testing would be the most important thing. So the way that we do it is obviously we'll test it internally before we deploy it. And then we'll actually have our clients have some of their team members test it as they were a fake patient, right, or a fake client coming into the process for this specific example. But there's nothing real than rolling it out, and then that's where you get the feedback. So always just kind of listening and making sure you're in tune with your client. So if they are calling in, if they're say like, hey, I'm having difficulty uploading this file or something is not working properly, it could be that the automation is broken and not working correctly as it should. So you always want to kind of make sure you're getting the feedback from clients at the end of the day.
Okay. And then someone else made the comment and said, we are a restaurant. And I'm not sure what automation process or what we would automate. Have you worked with restaurants before? And if so, have they automated any processes? If so, what was it? I think they're trying to get information.
Yeah. So we haven't done any automations for restaurants personally, but I think there is opportunity. If I had a guess, is obviously selecting a POS system that integrates with all types of other systems that you would use for reporting would probably be the first thing that comes to mind, or having the ability for for customers to come in and pay much easily would probably be one thing there. But no, I'm more happy to review if there's specific questions that they want to chat about. They can book a consultation.
That's the next question. Do you do free consultations?
We do, yes. So we'll do free consultations. I'll have a Bitly link at the end of this that everyone will be able to see, and they can book a consultation moving forward.
Okay.
Good questions. Any others? Oh, okay. So here they are, the 5 tips that we reviewed today. Start from tip number 1, as I mentioned, process is key. Don't even think about technology unless you have a process identified, because you don't want to try to throw technology at a broken process or one that hasn't had thought to say, hey, these are the pieces within the process that we can actually leverage technology for. Tip number 2, if you're booking any meetings, use a scheduling automation tool to make it a lot easier. You increase your rate of actually getting that meeting scheduled, and it also saves you a lot of time of having to go back and forth via email. Pro tip there for tip number 2 is maybe thinking about your process for how you want your weekly schedule to look like, and creating events within your scheduling automation tool like Calendly to accommodate those. So I mentioned the time blocks of only taking certain meetings Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 10 to 12, for example, and kind of blocking those out and having your scheduling automation tool work for you, not against you. Tip number 3, if you're not already doing it, use a project management tool to be able to track any tasks that need to get completed, keep track of who owns what, and also more importantly, be able to have a snapshot view of a specific task and what was already done, and if there's any open questions, and being able to monitor them moving forward. Tip number 4, if you don't have a CRM already, think about getting one implemented. There's several free tools that you can use, but once again, kind of ask the question of what are my core systems? Where do I want data to actually go from? So how am I getting the data from the inquiry? And then after they commit to actually purchasing from my organization, where does the data need to go? Because that might affect your decision-making process. And then obviously budget it will be a big one there for CRM. And then tip number 5, once we have all those processes down and we have the system selected and everything's working in your favor, we can then kind of figure out, okay, how do we set up the right integrations and automations moving forward so that you can work much more effectively and efficiently at the end of the day, and the technology will work for you and much more cohesively, is what I like to say there. So as I mentioned, so you can book a free free tech assessment this month, and that's completely free to book. And if you decide that you want to book it this month and you do kind of move forward with purchasing any services, as part of this presentation, we're offering $150 off any future services that you decide to purchase for us. And in order to book that call, you can just visit this bit.ly link. And the bit.ly link is case sensitive, so the R has to be capitalized as well as the DM. And it's no hassle on a tech assessment. Would love to just chat with you 30 minutes, kind of get an understanding of what you're looking for. A lot of times we also might say we might not be a good fit for you, or we might give you recommendations in real time that might be what you can go and use today. So we like those because it keeps us up to date on kind of challenges that are out there, as well as being able to provide value in a quick period of time. You can also email me directly. So my email is download.delil@RooksDM. You can check out our website. We have case studies on our website. You can also sign up for our newsletter there, and you can see kind of a little bit more about the services that we provide to our firms. With that said, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. It was a great presentation. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it. So.
Yeah, Dalil, can you put up the last slide so it's bigger so that we can have that info up?
Yep.
We do Q&A here. We do have some questions on Facebook. And one of the questions is during COVID, our offices are closed. We are looking at reevaluating our CRM system. How do you go about doing that now virtually?
Yep. So we do deep dive tech assessments, what we call them. So if you're looking at doing a reevaluation of your CRM system, what we would essentially come in and do is learn a little bit more about your sales process, and then ask you the question of like, what's wrong with your current CRM? What are the challenges? What are the gaps in the functionality? How is the team using it? So we would kind of do an assessment at the end of the day through some consulting. And then based off of that information that we gathered, we would provide our recommendations of saying, okay, this is a CRM system that we recommend you moving to because of your current tech stack and because of the limitations that the current CRM system is not able to accommodate.
Okay. We also have another question about what team members should be involved, if any, in this process of determining what technology we should be using, whether it's a CRM system or a calendar system.
So we believe, and what we do a lot of times too, is we'll work, if it's a smaller organization, we'll work with the owner directly to kind of understand where their challenges are. And then we'll actually request to kind of have a quick meeting with the specific individuals that would be using the system because we get key information from them. So a good example, you mentioned like the scheduling automation tool, that might be an admin that's doing it. And so what we want to understand is the owner could be doing it much different than the way the admin is doing it. And if the admin will be the one that is ultimately responsible for managing that moving forward, we need to figure out how do those two processes between the two different users work, because then we can provide the right recommendation. And then when we roll it out, we'll let them know, hey, we talked to the admin, we're doing it this specific way moving forward. So we might let the owner know, hey, moving forward, you should be doing it this way because this is how we set up the technology this is how we set up the technology for you guys to actually use.
Okay. And we may have talked about this earlier, but we have a business owner who says they have a pretty large staff of over 200 employees. Their upper management consists of 25 people. They like to make sure that all of upper management is included on all decisions, of course, for running the business. But we have different ideas for what CRM would work well for our business. We currently use Salesforce. Salesforce is becoming very, very expensive for us. We're looking at other CRM systems to lower costs. Do you have any suggestions? And do you have any suggestions on getting everyone on board? I think we kind of had a question earlier like that, but if you want to go ahead and address that.
Yeah, so I don't know if they're already working with a technology company, but that might be a good avenue as well too, because when we go into organizations for the first time, especially, we have a little bit of an unbiased view. So we can kind of put our facts and information together in a way that says, hey, we're just now getting up to speed. We were coming into this unbiased, and this would be kind of the recommendations we have based off the information we've been given. So that would be a starting point. The other point would probably be doing a comparison. So I know you guys are thinking about moving to different ones. I would probably do like a compare and contrast to kind of lay out what are the key challenges you're having right now. And then ultimately, like, what is the key functionalities and like, what would success look like, right? So if you move from CRM1 to CRM2, what are those key success metrics, and maybe creating some sort of table of that, and then having the various CRMs up top, and then you can have, hey, this one checks the box for that. Yep, we'll get the ability to automate our intake process through a jot form, for example. Check the box on that, and then you can kind of see, okay, this system can do everything that is what we must have for our requirements versus the system can't. And you have that all in I guess in a graph view, if you will, through the table that you would create.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Um, Definitely as a business owner, just seeing, I know a lot of websites for CRM systems, they do that.
Mhm.
where they're comparing to other their CRM to other CRM. So that's very helpful as far as like cost and benefits and what they offer and what they don't offer. So,
Yeah, and then the other thing to add there too, which we always do, is we collect what's known as like a tech stack sheet, and that's essentially a list of every single piece of technology that they're using that they're paying for, because that will sway the decision as well too, because it might not make sense to use a specific CRM if we have to do a bunch of customization to get it to integrate with some other systems. And I use the example of the law firm I was working with. They were a little bit smaller in nature, and their most important thing was being able to get the data into Smokeball, which is what they were using. And the CRM we actually recommended was one push click, and it would be able to take all the data from the CRM and push it directly into their practice management system. And it was not a lot of customization. It was a first party integration and make things a lot easier for their processes moving forward.
okay. So it is 10:30. I want to thank everyone for attending. Dalil, this was so helpful to all of us, including myself. Technology, when you're a business owner, is all over the place, and having someone to actually guide you through that process would be very helpful. So I can see how your services would be helpful for many, many businesses. So I will definitely make sure that I get everybody your contact information. And we have it up right now as well. I would definitely, as a business owner, I would copy this down and check it out. And definitely take advantage of that free consultation with Dalil, because this is key in every business. Doesn't matter what industry or what type of business you have. So I want to thank you, Dalil. This was so helpful.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed sharing a lot of this information.
Thank you so much. And it was a great presentation as well. Thank you. And I want to thank everyone that was on Facebook Live with us today and on Zoom. And with that, we will go ahead and end the presentation. Thank you, everyone.